Welcome to the Play Their Way podcast, where we talk about all things in Child First coaching. I'm your host, Laura Jane Jones, and today I'm excited to welcome our special guest, Ladi Ajayi. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Ajayi.
Ajayi, okay.
Yeah, that's all good though.
Well, welcome, Ladi. It's great to have you here. How are you today?
I am very well. The sun has been shining, and that always lifts me, especially when it's in winter. So, I'm feeling good.
You've brought the winter sun with you. I'm very, very pleased that you've brought it all the way from Essex. But you are originally from Hackney in East London, and you discovered sailing in your early teens and realised quickly it was the sport for you.
Oh, yeah.
You spent your life on the water, and you're now head of sport at AKD Solutions.
Yes.
Ladi, you've got a particular interest in how coaches can support and encourage young people from ethnically diverse backgrounds. And if you're already thinking, that name sounds familiar, Ladi, you also took part in the TV show Race Across the World.
Yes, I did. I was a contributor to that particular programme. A very poignant, tough, exciting and pleasurable experience.
Well, I'm desperate to hear more about that and your exploits on the show, but I want to start at the very beginning and go back to how things started for you with sailing. I'm going to read out a quote now.
Okay.
It's important to remember that not everyone who comes from deprived areas or inner cities are labelled as troublesome. Out of those different places, greatness has come. Now, that quote was obviously you. You said that, Ladi.
I did?
Yeah.
My goodness, that sounds actually quite good. But yeah.
So tell me about your start in sport and how opportunities were presented to you as a youngster in Hackney.
Okay. I've always said that your first teacher, your first coach is your significant parent, guardian, caregiver. I grew up in a single parent household. In Hackney, I had older brothers, I had younger brothers, all boys, no girls, and so things were tough, things were hard, and as I mature in age, I realised the difficulties and struggles that families such as mine had, and particularly my mum, as being a migrant to this country, heeding the call of, Great Britain needs to, support in building itself up after the war. So, yeah, my mum is of the Windrush generation. And what people seem to forget is that, not everybody came from the Caribbean. They came from Asia. They came from Africa. They came from the Far East to be within sight. So it's all colonies of Great Britain. So, that's a bit of context in terms of that. So, it's only now that I'm thinking about the struggles, hardships and barriers that she faced in order to raise, a family of all boys inside the middle of London. Single parent family, not much money in the household, and that can be replicated up and down the country and loads of people in terms of that. But I was very creative. My mum taught me to read very early. I was very attached to my mum, but, she had her own health problems and everything else like that. I ended up in care and was in the care system for a number of years. So, yeah, interesting time. However, getting into secondary school, I was... I don't think I was that troublesome, yeah? I just thought I was boisterous as being a boy, but I had an innate position in terms of what is fair and what isn't fair. I was not the one for collective punishment, so no, that didn't kind of float my boat. And where a teacher would say that, well, this person over there was being bad, so the whole class, I'm like, what are you talking about? Nothing to do with me. So I had an innate sense of fairness, and I would say that I was labelled as a potential troublemaker. Not that I got into much trouble. I was pretty articulate and smart enough to navigate my way around school, but there was always that potential. You were surrounded by things that were not necessarily productive or would have led to being a productive person with inside your long-term future or anything else like that. So there was an English teacher. Can we say the names of teachers and things
Absolutely.
like that? So his name was Hugh Bagan, an English teacher. and we called him Streaky Bacon because he was tall, thin, and white, and that was his name. But he had recently found sailing by going to somewhere in North London, and I'll never get this. This English teacher actually told me that I would fail in English. I was not going to do very well in English, and we debunked that later on. But he took a group of young boys, boisterous, on the fringes of trouble to sailing. And this was sailing in North London on a reservoir, which, you just wouldn't associate sailing in London to that extent. So, took us there on a school trip almost and we went sailing, and it was the best thing that ever happened for me. I felt a sense of freedom that I had not necessarily had before. I had a sense of control where I was in control of that boat, and it was me, and my decisions made a difference. I was a leader in the boat, even though I'd never been in a boat before and I was learning. But all of these things and these things that, evoked these feelings within inside me that I now had an opportunity to be in control of what I wanted to do. And from that moment there, the very same afternoon, after getting back to school, I went back to the sailing base, and I was there continuously for, years, decades. In fact, I maintained being at that space because it was my escape, it was my freedom, it was my piece of sanity in a madness that was going on around with me at the time. So I say that, from your first coach or teacher being your parents to significant other adults within your life, to being inside an environment that is accepting of you, where they made you feel that you belong and you had some agency inside there. I think for me, that is what young people need when they are finding their way inside any sport or physical activity. These are the building blocks which leads to lifelong engagement and involvement inside that. So, anyone out there listening, just make people belong, include them, give them a sense of agency and belonging and a stake inside whatever's happening, and you probably will keep them there.
When you talk about agency, it really lends itself to those pillars of play their way, one of them, of course, being choice. You were given an opportunity in a sport that perhaps would have been completely inaccessible if you were in a different class, if you had a different English teacher.
Yeah.
Had you not experienced those feelings of belonging or fit, for instance, in other sports that you'd participated in at that point?
No, not really. I would say that at that period of time, in the area in which I grew up and lived, the influences were your PE teacher, or if you had older siblings or older people who you looked up to, or your friendship group, you would probably gravitate towards the activity that they were doing. So at school, I was a prolific rugby player, believe it or not. We had a Welsh head of PE. What was his name again?
If you say Mr. Jones, I'll forgive you for guessing with that one.
Probably was Mr. Jones, and we used to call him Patchy O'Reilly because he had a bald head, with the hair around the outside. But we had there was another guy named Pete Messenger who was part of I think he was part of Saracens, so he played for Saracens, B team or something like that. So there was the influence in there, but we were a rugby school in the middle of inner city London. I went to Woodbury Down Comprehensive, the first comprehensive inside the UK, in Manor House. No, it's not in Stamford Hill, as some people may say. It's Manor House, London. And it was quite revolutionary because everyone was playing football and everything else. Nobody was playing rugby. So when we played rugby, and the school excelled at rugby, they were very good, and we had to play schools on the outside of which we used to think were absolutely foreign. So St. Aloysius all the way out in Enfield and all of these other private schools and things like that. So, but yeah, we were really good at rugby, and rugby was one of the sports that I could have gravitated towards, you know. I was never good at football. I was good at lumping people up in the air. So yeah, you play in defence, you know. But the choice of what you could actually do was very limiting and limited. You know, I think we were fortunate enough. So back in those days, you had the GLC, and so you had ILEA in the London Education Authority, and during PE sessions, we were taking on coaches to outer London to where there were green fields and everything else like that to play our sport. So we went out to Redbridge in a place called Fairlop. So we'd done tennis, we done roller skating, believe it or not, we done badminton. There were things that, you know, you could do, but anything outlying out of those things there, no. So we were very fortunate that we were able to go sailing. And I must say that in Hackney, yeah, there is significant amount of water inside Hackney. So you have canals, you have rivers, you even has reservoirs there, where I now go open water swimming. Another conversation for another day. But there is a tremendous amount of water there. So, you know, it only lends me to doing water sports. So, yeah, it is, you know, young people are often influenced and sometimes pigeonholed by the influences that are around them and surrounding them.
Well, that's what I want to ask you about, Ladi. I guess you were lucky that you were within an LEA and within a local authority that very much had a forward-thinking attitude to these things. But that certainly wasn't a social norm then, and it probably to some extent still isn't now. So when you did get into sailing and you started these experiences, you must have gone to these regattas and stuck out, for want of a better phrase.
Hell to the yeah. It was like, you know, domino effects, isn't it? You know, you are the spot on the domino. Yeah. I'm not saying that there wasn't other people prior to me who were black and who were sailing. And that was all because of ILEA in the London Education Authority and the outdoor water sports centre that they had at Banbury, you know. So there were one or two, but when my first class went, the class that I went with, we were predominantly black, brown, global majority people who were taken to that experience. You know, my best friend at the time, yeah, a white guy who I grew up in care with, came with us as well, and it was me and him that stuck to it, yeah. And, you know, throughout my sailing career, you know, he was with me all the time. It was us together. So no, there isn't the expansiveness now, or even then, of choice. So yeah, we were fortunate. We were really lucky to be with inside that.
And we can focus on the fact that you would have looked different to other kids as this spot on the domino, as you call it.
It really was. My first competitive regatta was the National School Sailing Association regatta, and where was it? I think it was Bathurst in the Lake District, and I distinctly remember being the only black person there. You know, and these are this is made up of county sailing associations across England who go to this regatta to race. And so there's hundreds of boats there in different classes, you know, hundreds, thousands of kids there at the time. It was very well attended, and I was the only one. So I was a novelty. Did I feel excluded? No, because I was there and I was there on merit. Did it bother me? Not really, because I was focused on racing and winning. Were there incidences of discrimination or racism? I can't say that there were incidences of discrimination. There were certainly incidences of racism. Now, I'm a fairly robust and large enough person. So, and I come from Hackney, so I'm not having it. Yeah, end of. So it was very quickly established that was not the line to cross with me. Yeah, and it kind of like, made it well known with inside those people who were at that regatta, but mainly and mostly, people were accepting of you. You were just another competitor and sailor against that. I think the shock came when we started to win. That's when the shock comes. That's when how the hell are they managing to do that? That's when what are they doing differently that our children and kids who have got, lots of resources, access to stuff, what's going on? Why we had the most basic of basic equipment, and I take my hat off to my two sailing instructors, the people who taught me how to sail and to race and to navigate the sailing world. Jeff and Steve, Steve Earls and Jeff Philby. They managed to, pull rabbits out of hats to afford the people with inside Ilya equipment and that. And I must admit, there was more resources available around those times as opposed to now, but, they made the most of things. And they taught us as young people, how to stick together, how to be as a team, how to be supportive of each other. So I didn't face that, massive discriminatory, responses to us winning. I think it was more shock than most things. I mean, they had snide remarks there, but wasn't interested.
Was there a recognition as a youngster in those environments, though, that you came from in some cases, dramatically different socio-economic background? So whilst you were visibly different to your peers in those boats, for you as a youngster, did you realise and recognise that perhaps your background, where you came from, the resources that were available to you, was that affecting?
I can honestly say that no. For me, I had a boat, I was there to compete. I would do the best that I can with what I had. Yeah. Yes, you did know that there were young people there who had their own boats. They actually belonged to them. Yeah. They had the latest equipment on that boat, and it was top spec. You saw the cars in the boat park and things like that. It wasn't your Ford Escort or your Ford Transit. It was like the Volvos and the Range Rovers and the Defenders and everything else like that. So you knew there was the resources, even down to the equipment that they were wearing. The wetsuits, the dry suits, the buoyancy aids that they had. It was, but that didn't. I'm like, yeah, okay, they've got that. Didn't bother me or faze me in any way.
Did sport then feel like a great leveler in that instance? Once you were in the boat, you were all equal.
I think it's different with inside. It's different with inside sailing, where you are reliant upon your equipment. That is a major factor in how well you do. Yeah. But equally as well, the leveler was that we are all sailing. We are all going to go around this course. We have all got to follow the rules within inside this sport. And you have to be talented enough to be able to win, yeah? Or even to be up there in the fleet, You've got to have some talent to be able to do that. We had talent, and we were able to make the best out of what we had. For me, it's just, imagine if we had the latest gear, the best gear, how much better would we have been? How much more would we have won? Because we were an anomaly. If anyone knows anything about the National School Sailing Association stuff, and they were to look back on the records of when me and my partner were sailing, you'll see Ilya on certain things, yeah. because we was, representing in the London Education Authority. So much so that we named our boat Godzilla. Yeah?
Very
and
clever.
we called it Godzilla because every time we went to a regatta somewhere and we were up there in the fleet and winning races, people on the bank and the foreshore were saying, "God, it's Ilya! God, it's Ilya! God, it's Ilya!" So that was the name of it, Godzilla. That's the name of our boat. And for me, I think that's kind of like a mark of success, to be recognised by people who would never ever think you should be there, and we're there, and we're winning, and we're making an impact. That's great, because for me, I hope that it would have helped any other person coming in from behind us, socioeconomically wise, from cultural and diverse backgrounds, women and girls, to be able to navigate and know that they could excel with inside this as well. To an extent, and I do put a caveat to that, to an extent.
One of the things you said about before you discovered sailing and you were going through your journey of trying different sports and what that was like for you as a youngster, you talked about the people that you looked up to and perhaps that would inform the sporting decisions you made. How much do you think it's also a case of, for kids who come from black and brown backgrounds, it's who they look like? Do you think we're still guilty of making assumptions of children based on where they live, where they come from socioeconomically, their race when it comes to sport? Are we saying these black kids will be good at athletics still?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, it's just like a gimme, You go into school and you have a tall person, you'll be great at basketball, yeah? And this person might be an absolute monster of a swimmer, Same somatotypes. He could be an absolute brilliant rower, yeah? But the first thing will be that you'll be a great basketball player, or you are maturing very quickly and you're putting in bulk and muscles and everything. Oh, be a great rugby player, Oh, you'd be great at boxing. Oh, yeah, I think you'd be absolutely brilliant. And they don't give the opportunity to explore other things. Why not, sailing? Why not, water sports? Why not, volleyball? Why not golf? Why not tennis? Why not all of these other plethora of things that are out there? You are pigeonholed in that. And I think that certainly with my children, I exposed them to anything. It didn't matter. If it was Twiddlywinks, we're going to play Twiddlywinks at this day. So, and they find their own path where they want to be. They find their own tribe. They, give people the opportunity to try things and then they'll find their own way. But equally as well, the environment has to be right as well for that young person. So you may direct somebody to a resource of football or something like that. But if the environment is not right for that young person, if they feel that they do not belong, if they feel that they're not included, then they'll very quickly exit that particular place to find their own space where they feel the most comfortable. So, you might have the right somatotypes, you might have the right intentions in terms of, they come from a family that hasn't got much resources, therefore I will point them to a direction in which, it's lower costs for them to be engaging inside that. I say rip that up, throw that out of the way, give people as much experience. And sometimes someone will find a way if that person is really invested and involved and wants to be involved in that sport. And we ought to be, creating those opportunities for young people and for children to experience those things from wherever they come from, whatever background they're from.
If we recognise that we are unconsciously diminishing opportunity because we're pigeonholing kids, and we want to widen the bandwidth of all sports so that every child from every background, every colour, every religion, every culture gets an opportunity at everything, what do we need to do to make these sports feel more accessible? Is it just about the children? Is it about their parents feeling like it's a more accessible space?
Okay, so firstly, I strongly believe that, that I strongly believe that there is conscious bias within inside all of this. I understand the concept of unconscious bias and everything else like that. Cool. But we ignore the fact that there is conscious bias as well. And we ought to recognize that. I think that, if you want to diversify the people who are engaging inside your sport and your activity, you need to look within first, yeah? When was the last time that you felt excluded from a particular situation? Yeah. And I'm not just talking about sport. It could be that, I've gone to a meeting and I'm the only woman inside the room. Yeah. I've gone to a wedding and, this is not my religious gathering. I've gone to a Pentecostal wedding somewhere that is completely out of my. Yes, we're Christians, but there's many houses within inside Christianity. So, think about the times where you felt most excluded, yeah, and think about what would have made you feel very much included within inside that space. So, yes, we need to offer those opportunities, as many opportunities as possible to the young people. But we equally need to, build an environment in which their support mechanisms feel included as well. As a parent, I would never leave my child somewhere if I felt uncomfortable in that environment myself. I couldn't do that. So you need to look at the parents and guardians of those young people. It's great to facilitate some form of communication with the places in which they're educated, so their local schools and things like that. Easier said than done when our whole sporting system is built around volunteers, yeah? So I get it, but just that odd letter, odd phone call, odd communication with the school, we're the club down the road, we're doing this, we really welcome your children, is it possible that one of our coaches can come and visit the school, or somebody from the administration can come and visit and talk about us? Can we leave some leaflets with inside you? Would you like to bring some of your children down to wherever we are in terms of a PE session or an after-school session or something like that? There are ways in which you can communicate and foster that communication between different areas, which will help with making people feel comfortable. But you've got to be intentional about that, yeah? You can't just think, oh, well, I tried once and that's it. Or, well, we ain't got the time, or we ain't got the resource, or you've got to be intentional about it. If you really want to make a difference in terms of the diversity within inside your own setup, within inside your sport, within inside your space, then you need to be intentional about it. And you need to bring on board the people who are existing within inside that as well. So it can't be just the one person within inside there, the club captain, the administrator, the coach. It's got to be conscious for everybody, and it's got to be baked in to the makeup and the DNA of that organisation. That's when you get transformational change in terms of diversifying those who engage with the sport. So it's not just one thing, it's lots of different things.
I know that there'll be coaches listening who will look at their own environments and organisations and think, okay, I can see some of these barriers. The fact that if there are children from different cultural backgrounds or more ethnically diverse kids, they won't see themselves in our group, and that's something we need to widen. Or perhaps children who've got different socioeconomic needs, and oftentimes uniform and resource are an issue. These are barriers that those of us who aren't affected can quite easily recognise. But what are the invisible barriers that we're missing? What are the blind spots for a lot of organisations, do you think?
You know what? I think some of the blind spots that organisations miss, specifically with inside coaching, is first impressions count, and if you are trying to impart knowledge and understanding to a new recipient, you've got to understand that recipient, or come some way to understand them. Yeah. So, I may not know their economic status, but this is what we do. This is how we engage. This is the equipment that we use, but there are alternatives or levels to that. And you're already coming here for the first time, so don't worry about that. Be reasonably aware that there may be something you don't know for certain, but make accessibility as easy as possible. So as a coach, you can't be insisting that you have to wear the same colour, underpants as your shorts with inside football or something like that, or you can only wear this because the rule's saying when we're in competition. That's not the point. You want people to engage in them, for them to feel comfortable. I think nuances around, culture, food, if you're handing out snacks or whatever inside that session, just be aware that may not resonate with that person's culture, religious reasons, health reasons. Is this person got a nut allergy? Is this person gluten intolerant? Yeah. Things that you might need to be aware of, have an understanding of neurodiversity. That person isn't making eye contact with me. Why aren't they looking at me when that could be a neurodivergent thing. That also could be cultural upbringing, In some communities, you're taught if you're looking at your elders, I'm not going to look you in the eye. That's a sign of disrespect, yeah? But in other cultures, if I'm not looking at you, you're disrespecting me. So be aware of subtleties and things like that. The way in which people communicate as well. If you are a good coach, you'll quickly suss out fairly quickly how best to communicate with an individual, and especially with a child as well. People just want to belong first and foremost, but sometimes shouting and things like that may not be the best way to communicate with an individual, and so you have to have a different approach in which you want to communicate. So these are subtleties that you need to pick up as a coach, and I think any coach worth their salt probably does pick up those things, probably does understand those things, but it's bringing it into the environment in which new people are coming into and just understanding that they are new to my environment. I've got to make them feel as welcome as possible. I need to make them belong. I need to make them feel included. So it is things like, you might want to buddy them up with somebody who's already existing with inside there. You might want to orchestrate some ice-breaking exercise routines, drills or something like that are fun, basic, but gets people talking to each other with inside the group. You can make that new person feel special because they are special. You've come here today. And those things just, transcend all of they're black, they're from a different religion, they come from the local estate over there. That transcends all of that. The basis of that, this is another human being that's taken themselves into a space where it's unfamiliar to them, and you, as the coach, has got to make that person feel as welcome as possible, that they belong, that they feel included with inside that. That is the most important things, and it goes a long way. And I wouldn't feel afraid of, have I said the right thing? Have I done the right? You're going to make mistakes. You're going to mess up, yeah? And that's okay. Yeah, that is okay. You can mess up and you can rectify that and educate yourself and find out. I think the other thing as well that people need to be, aware of is that don't look for that person to give you the answers. Go and do some of the hard yards yourself, yeah? If you know that there is a young, Far Eastern person from the Far East that's coming in here from Malaysia or the Philippines or something like that, do a little bit of research yourself. Find out about, how is the sport played with inside their environments or anything else like that. Are there any role models with inside there that are on the world scale, that you can cite with inside your sessions? So there's things like that a coach, a club and environment needs to be, cognizant of.
How important is it that we don't treat children who are of ethnically diverse backgrounds as a silo, though? I know that we talk all the time about not all children are the same. So we're talking about a group, but actually when it comes down to the nitty gritty of coaching and involvement and participation, how important is it that we're not forcing them into even positive steps that we think. I said to you before we started recording, I've got a neighbour who, everyone says, oh, do you want to be Simone Biles because she's young and black? She wants to be Katie Ledecky.
Yeah.
How important is it that we're recognising our unconscious bias in those senses, even if we think we're being positive in it?
I think, there's it's very easy to kind of like fall into that trap of, I'm not, I want to make you feel comfortable. I'm going to put up whatever I see in front of you. But that's where the questioning comes into that young person. What do they want out of things? What excites them? What floats their boat? What's attracted them to being here today? Were you forced in here by your parents to say that, well, you have to do some form of activity and you're doing this because you've spent so long trying to choose, I'm putting you inside here. I think the thing is to speak to that young person, find out about them first, and then you can start making references to different places, because they may not even be aware of Simone Biles. They may have no idea who Simone Biles is.
Well, Aladdin, our producer, didn't know who she was.
No, he didn't, and I'm just totally disappointed with Aladdin on that. But hey,
you started this podcast talking about your relationship with fear as a child, and it's something I wanted to revisit because I'd imagine in those early days of being this child going into an environment that was so alien to a kid from Hackney. Let's not call you Laddie the black kid or Laddie the kid who was in care. Just a young lad from Hackney going to the Lake District for a regatta. You must have had to have a huge amount of bravery to put yourself out there. So where did your internal voice come from and how did you feel in those instances? Tell us about your journey there.
Ooh, okay, so when I started sailing, as I said, we learnt to sail in Ilia, on the Ilia base in Chingford, Banbury Reservoir, North London, and there were other people who were older than me who were sailing, yeah. And the more I got into it, the more I wanted to, be able to do everything that they done, yeah. I wanted to be able to, compete and be as fast as them and go into the more faster boats and the more performance orientated boats and I was able to do that after a period of time and the conversation around those young people is when we go to them in the National School Sailing Association we get to the regatta and whatever. So the first regatta that I was aware of I think was Wolverston, so that's off the Kent coast, I think it is, and we weren't allowed to go. Me and my partner weren't allowed to go because it was deemed that we were not good enough or we was not experienced enough to go, and I was not happy at all, and I think that kind of like evoked this kind of burning desire in me to get better and better so that nobody could deny me that opportunity again to say that you can't go to that competition, you can't. So yeah, there was more and more and more and more training inside that. So my first regatta was the following year and it was in Bassenthwaite in the Lake District. Now the inner me is like, if you tell me I can't do something, then I'm going to do it, yeah. Especially at that young age, I was a lot more gun-ho and not accepting of things, like why can't I do that and who says I can't, and that produces that fire and that inner voice within inside there. And there's also that I'm a competitor. I want to win anything and everything, be it a foot race, be it a sailing race, be it swimming in the water. I want to win. Don't discount me for anything. I want to win. So there is a competitive edge within inside me, which I don't know where that actually come from, but maybe having, older brothers and competing against them in any way, maybe that's there. But I think the inner voice was always about competing, was always about winning, was always about doing things that people said I can't do. So there was no fear in terms of going to a strange place, a strange land, to do something that I was confident that I could do and I could excel in. There was no fear. I think fear comes when you have reached a particular level and you need to, what do I need to do now to move to that next level? That's the fear. I'm training so hard now. I'm doing everything that I can do now. Wow, how am I going to get to there? You know, how am I going to get to the next bit? That's where doubts and fears come into you there. But going to the different places, not a problem at all. I'm braggadocious enough at that age to like, you know, I don't care who you are, I'm going to whoop you. Yeah, that's the attitude that you had to have. Otherwise, you would crumble. You would crumble very, very quickly. So fear, I wouldn't call it fear as such in terms of the new places. And we went different places. We went up to Scotland, Largs, you know, Bassenthwaite, you know, we went Cowes, we went, you know, back to Wolverstone. We went to different places all over the country, sailing, you know, and as I said, being my partner Paul, we were the, you know, we were a team together. So it wasn't just me by myself. I had my mate there, Paul, with me, and I had the support of the team from the sailing base and Ilya and everything else like that. So it was never, you was never isolated or alone in that way. You know, I did used to wonder, well, where are all the other people who looked like me with inside this space? And there was the odd one or two later on, you know, but it was like, okay, so I'm going to be that domino, whatever, let's go.
As well as working to create opportunity for kids and making sure that there are children that look like them, that they can see, how important has it been for you to help more diverse coaches come through? I know you recently organised a coaching catch-up for us for Black History Month.
Yeah.
How important is it that kids see not just kids that look like them, but coaches in the spaces that look like them? Someone to aim for, someone to stoke their ambition.
Yeah, it's vitally important that the whole of the sports ecosystem is diverse. And that includes coaching, that includes officiating, that includes administration. And I will go so far as to say that not only should you be representative with inside those spaces, but you should also be leaders with inside those spaces as well. You know, we need head coaches who are diverse. We need performance directors who are diverse. We need the CFOs and the COOs and the CEOs who are diverse. We need the board chairs and the board champions to be diverse. So it's across the whole of the ecosystem that you have to see that diversity. Where it comes to coaching, I think it's vitally important that there is a range of different people from different backgrounds and different experiences that elevate the knowledge and the experiences that can be imparted upon young people. Because you're not going to get everything from one source. You're going to get it from a range of sources. And the more in-depth and rich diversity that you have, invariably you'll get a better athlete, a better person at the other end of that. So it is vitally important. And the support systems around the coaches as well. So the coach educators, yeah, the sports science, the support, the nutritionist, the strength and conditioning, yeah, that all needs to be diverse, because that diversity brings in new ideas, new ways of communicating, new ways of training, new ways of expressing yourself, you know, makes a better athlete at the end of the day. And it's not necessarily just at the performance end of things as well. Just great human beings are created through lots of different influences.
Can I ask you, do you think at the moment there's a risk that whilst we're being given, and I say us because as you know, someone who comes from another group that's often marginalised as a woman, we're given space to have these conversations, but we're still not in the decision-making roles? Is that the next thing that we need to change?
Okay, so I would say that there has been a shift, a transformational shift in terms of women in sport being in leadership positions, in leadership roles, and that's been baked into policy and strategy around the sports ecosystem inside the UK. So we look to the Sports Governance Code, where sports and organisations, national governing bodies who are publicly funded, have to meet a governance code, a standard. And very early on, it was baked in to that standard that, 30% of board positions were to be the target that organisations should have female representation there. And over the last 15, 20 years, there has been a paradigm shift in terms of female being inside those decision-making spaces. So we have female CEOs of NGBs. We have chairs of boards who are female. We have, directors of sports who are female. We have all of these things that are happening now, and it's been a paradigm shift. I see it now. Our sports minister, Lisa Nandy, is a female. There have been other female, the chair of UK Sport, female, Kathleen Granger. So there are things there, but we could break that down even more, So yes, there are lots of females, but of those females there, how many are from an LGBTQIA+ background? How many of them are from a black or culturally diverse background? How many of them? So you can break that down even more. And I am really happy and glad to see that female shift, I haven't seen that in other protected characteristics with inside sport. So we haven't seen the disabled persons or person who has a disability with inside those decision-making leadership positions, mainly with inside those disability para sports. There may be some there, but even in that, you're not seeing that. Certainly with inside black, brown and global majority people, we're not in those leaderships and decision-making positions. So, I say there is a shift, there is a slight shift in terms of NED positions, non-executive director positions. So you are now starting to see people sitting on boards who come from black, brown and global majority people who are sitting in those positions there, but we're not seeing that in the executive. So, you're not seeing the director of sports from black, brown or global majority. You could even, it goes deep. It goes so deep as into that active partnerships, which are the regional convening governance of sport and physical activity that are set up across England, Out of the 43 that are inside England, only 2 of those are led CEOs, heads of leaders of those are from a black or global majority community. So of the 43, there's only those there. Where we look at, CEOs of the major sports governing bodies inside the UK, I cannot think of one who comes from a black, brown, global majority background with inside there. So there's lots of work still to be done. I'll give you another statistic. So out of all of the directors of sports for the universities that we have inside the UK, I can recollect that there's only been one director of sports, and that was Phil Newman at LSBU, London South Bank University, over the last, for whatever, up until now, there still isn't one now. I'd love to be corrected on that, but no. So you got to think to yourself, well, there's something fundamentally wrong there. There is no way, statistically, that should really be happening. So there's a lot of work to be done, and people need to recognise that. And although people recognise it, they also need to do something about it as well. So don't just look at it and say, yeah, you're right, and then do nothing. Do something, and do something now. I'm tired of waiting. Yeah, I will fight the good fight until my last breath. Yeah, but I don't want to see my children, my grandchildren, if I ever get any. I'm not putting it out there.
No
that,
pressure on
no
your
pressure
kids
on
there.
the kids there. None of that. But the friends who I identify, the communities that I am in, I don't want them to be going through the next decade of not seeing that change inside there.
Would that shift have a direct impact on participation in those groups that we worry sit on the outside of sports participation on the UK?
I think there's two things to that. Yes, it would have a shift, because that diversity of thought, strategy, policy will change within inside those organisations, which will be making them become more inclusive. Now, I'm not just saying that representation is the be-all and end-all. I'm going to be controversial here, yeah? We look at we look at our political parties at the moment, and representation doesn't necessarily mean that they represent everybody there. Yeah, so there is a broad spectrum of people. I cannot put my hand up and say I represent all black males inside the UK. So there's a broad spectrum, and sometimes people may appear to be, a representative, but don't actually represent a large body or even come close to those things. So I would say that first and foremost, yeah. Yes, there is that shift, that there will be a shift within inside that if that happens, yeah. But it has to be intentional, You cannot just be a tick box exercise. I am a firm believer in accountability, yeah, and accountability with inside structures. I'm also a firm believer with inside targets, yeah. I think, wow, we have to go political again, but okay. The last political administration before this one, yeah, had the opportunity to help shape the sports governance code, where we look at black, brown, global majority people being in positions of leadership. They could have baked that out into the revised sports governance code. It didn't happen. And there's lots of different reasons in the background for that. But if it had worked for women, yeah, why would you not do that for people with disabled people and people from black, brown and global majority? Why wouldn't you do that? The politics at the time wasn't, aligned with that thinking. Let's just call it as it is, yeah. There are people within inside the right wing of politics that were waging a cultural war and everything else like that. I think the messaging as well is another thing that is really, really key. And so the narratives that are being told within inside our sports media, yeah, is equally important, yeah. So where are the stories that resonate with black, brown, global majority people within inside sport, the sports media? Where is that happening for women and girls within inside the sports media? Where is that happening for people from the LGBTQI and disability and all those protected characteristics? It's not. The vast swathes of the sports media industry is white and male, yeah? And, there's so much that can be said about that.
We'll call that one off. Because before we finish this podcast,
yeah, sure.
Laddie, I have to ask you about Race Across the World.
All right, ask away.
What was that like? How amazing an experience was it? And especially so because you did it with your daughter.
Oh yeah, I mean, Race Across the World was a trip, literally trip as a trip, and it was a trip. It was a brilliant experience. I loved every moment of it in reflection. Yeah, at the time, it was hard. I don't think people fully appreciate how hard that actually is. Yeah. But doing it with my adult daughter was just, if someone was to say to me, okay, Laddie, tomorrow pack your rucksack again, you're off to it, I'll say it in a heartbeat. I'll do it straight away. you know, and I would do it with my daughter. I would do it with my son as well. 2 different experiences, but, you know, it was, I will never again get that concentrated adult one-to-one 24/7 time with my daughter again. It's never going to happen again. Yeah, never going to happen again. She's going to get married. She's going to have children, hopefully. That's the grandchildren part. No pressure on, but you know, it's going to happen. But it was brilliant. It really did, you know, show the humanity in people in this world, and it really did restore your faith in your humanity, because there are some really genuinely nice, great, beautiful people out there that, you know, will just do things, give their shirt off their back to you, literally, in situations. And we found that with Inside Canada, and the cynicism that we live in our own lives, heads down, just shuffling away, doing what you're doing. But that really did restore my faith in humanity, and it was brilliant. It was hard, but it was brilliant. I got to do things that I never thought I would see. I honestly thought I would never see a glacier in my lifetime. You know, I saw a glacier. I stood beside a glacier and I saw this glacier. It was just like nuts, and the colours are vivid blues with insight. It was just like amazing. I camped beside a frozen lake. I wouldn't necessarily, you know, say people to go and camp behind a frozen lake. It's cold. It's like camping inside your freezer, but it is a brilliant experience. The people that we saw. I went to a place on one of the biggest freshwater lakes in the world, on an island, on a lake, on an island. It was, come on, how do you?
But did they have a sailing boat for you? That's what I want to know.
You see, they didn't, but I did canoe while I was out there.
Fine.
There you go. I canoed.
We'll take that.
I'll take that. But yeah, I mean, a beautiful, vast country. You know, some brilliant and beautiful people. There were some arseholes inside there as well, but you know, you get that everywhere. But what an amazing experience. And if anybody has the opportunity to do something like that, do it. Just do it, because it is just so life invigorating, and did it bring myself and my daughter closer together? We were always close. You know, we have a beautiful relationship. For me, it just affirmed to me that if I was to disappear off this planet tomorrow, she would be all right. She will be able to navigate herself through the world in her own way. I say it's Mon's world, we just live in it, but you know, she's my baby, she's my princess, and I know that she will navigate, and her heart is pure and good.
Brilliant. Well, Ladi, it's been life affirming to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your time.
It's been brilliant. Thank you so much.
And thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed. If we've piqued your interest in our coaching catch-ups, head to the website for more info on how you can get involved. And as always, you can get other free resources via the Play Their Way website at www.playtheirway.org. If you've enjoyed this podcast today, be sure to leave us a review and share this with someone else who you think might like it too. And follow Play Their Way on social media at Play Their Way on TikTok, X and LinkedIn, and at Play Their Way UK on Facebook and Instagram.